You are listening to Ruth, a tale of loyalty and destiny based on the Bible and recreated with artificial intelligence. Chapter 1. The Winds of Famine. Bethlehem was suffering. What was once a lush town, known for its bountiful harvests and referred to as the House of Bread, now lay under the oppressive shadow of a relentless famine. The earth, which had once been generous, was now stubbornly unyielding. The fields that used to wave with golden wheat stood still, parched and desolate. In this troubled town lived Elimelech from the tribe of Ephrath. His wife Naomi was a gentlewoman with a heart full of love for her two sons, Mahlon and Kilion. Together they had built a life in Bethlehem, always reliant on the graciousness of the seasons and the blessings from above. However, as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, with no sign of reprieve from the famine, Elimelech's heart grew heavy with worry. One evening, as the sun set, casting long, forlorn shadows over the barren fields, Elimelech gathered his family. With a deep sigh, he shared his decision. They would leave Bethlehem and travel to the land of Moab, where rumours whispered of fields still green and rivers that still sang. Naomi, ever supportive of her husband, nodded, though her heart ached at the thought of leaving their homeland. Mahlon and Kilion, young and adaptable, saw it as a new adventure, an escape from the oppressive hunger that gripped Bethlehem. Packing their belongings, they bade farewell to their home, their friends, and their familiar surroundings. As they made their way to Moab, the journey was filled with hope and trepidation. Hope for a new beginning, and trepidation for the unknowns that lay ahead in a foreign land. Upon their arrival in Moab, the family was indeed met with the sight of greener pastures, a stark contrast to the barren fields of Bethlehem. The people of Moab, though worshipping different gods, were not unwelcoming. Elimelech, using his skills and knowledge of farming, quickly found a place among the farmers of Moab. Naomi, drawing strength from her unwavering faith, tried to establish a semblance of home in this foreign land. The boys, curious and energetic, began to adapt to their new surroundings, making friends and slowly integrating into Moabite society. But as the days turned into years and the family began to lay down roots in this foreign soil, fate had other plans. Tragedy struck, changing the course of their lives forever. Elimelech, the pillar of the family, passed away, leaving Naomi and her sons to navigate the complexities of life in Moab without him. The winds that had once carried them to Moab in search of sustenance now seemed to whisper of uncertainty and change. And as Naomi mourned the loss of her husband, she remained unaware that the winds of fate were still blowing, setting the stage for a story that would become legendary. Chapter 2. Whispers of Home. The town of Moab was set against a backdrop of rolling hills and sprawling fields. But for Naomi, its beauty was overshadowed by sorrow. The once vibrant home she had built with Elimelech now seemed like a house of memories, each corner echoing with his absence. With time, however, life found a way to move forward. Mahlon and Kilion, young men now, found love in the land of Moab. Mahlon married Orpah, a Moabite woman with a quiet strength and gentle spirit. Kilion, on the other hand, found his heart's match in Ruth, a lady with a fiery spirit and a compassionate soul. Naomi found solace in her sons and their wives. The household bustled with the joy of youth, shared dreams, and hopeful tomorrows. Yet, even as they built their lives, there was an undercurrent of longing, a yearning for the land they had left behind. As years slipped by, whispers from distant travellers began to fill the air with news. Bethlehem was alive again. The famine had lifted, and the fields of Naomi's homeland were once more golden with grain, brimming with the promise of harvest. But just as these whispers brought hope to Naomi's heart, another blow struck. In a cruel twist of fate, both Mahlon and Kilion fell ill and passed away in their prime, leaving behind their young widows. The house that had once echoed with laughter was now filled with the weight of grief. Naomi, with the weight of loss heavy on her shoulders, felt the pull of her homeland even stronger. One evening, as she sat with Orpah and Ruth, she voiced her thoughts. "I hear the land of Judah is flourishing again," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. I think of going back. Perhaps there I might find some respite from this grief. Both Orpah and Ruth looked at Naomi, their faces etched with pain and understanding. They too had lost, and the idea of leaving behind all that was familiar was daunting. Naomi, seeing their distress, spoke gently. "My daughters, you have been kinder to me than 7 sons would have been. But go, return to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me." Orpah, tears in her eyes, kissed Naomi and made the heart-wrenching decision to stay in Moab, to be with her family and try to rebuild her life. But Ruth clung to Naomi, her determination evident. "Do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you," Ruth declared with a fervour that surprised even Naomi. "For where you go I will go, and where you lodge I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." Naomi looked into Ruth's eyes, seeing the unwavering commitment and love that shone from them. With a heavy heart, she nodded, and together they began preparations for their journey back to Bethlehem, drawn by whispers of home and the promise of a new beginning. Chapter 3. The Return to Bethlehem. The journey back to Bethlehem was not easy. The 2 widows, one a native and the other a foreigner, had to traverse rugged terrain, rely on the kindness of strangers, and endure the unpredictable weather. But throughout the journey, Naomi and Ruth shared stories of their past, reliving memories and dreaming of the future. As they approached Bethlehem, the sight of the town's familiar hills and the gentle rustling of barley in the wind evoked a rush of memories for Naomi. But with these memories also came a deep sense of loss, a recognition of the years and loved ones she had lost since she last treaded these grounds. When they entered the town, their arrival did not go unnoticed. The women who were drawing water from the well or milling about the market stopped in their tracks. "Is this Naomi?" they whispered among themselves. The weight of the years and her sorrows had changed her, but the essence of who she was remained familiar to those who had known her. Yet Naomi, sensing their whispers and feeling the weight of her losses, responded, "Do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty." Ruth, standing by Naomi's side, felt a mixture of emotions. The unfamiliarity of the place, the curious and sometimes judgmental glances of the townspeople, and the profound sorrow of her mother-in-law weighed on her. Yet she also felt a strong resolve. She had chosen to be by Naomi's side, and she intended to stand by her commitment. As the days passed, the initial shock and surprise of their return settled. Naomi and Ruth found a modest dwelling to call home. While Naomi reconnected with old acquaintances, sharing stories of her time in Moab, Ruth took on the responsibility of ensuring their sustenance. The fields of Bethlehem were alive with activity. It was the beginning of the barley harvest, and the town was buzzing with anticipation. Ruth, ever resourceful, decided to glean in the fields after the harvesters, picking up whatever grains were left behind, as was the right of the poor and the strangers. In this humble act, the next chapter of their lives began to unfold. For the field Ruth chose to glean in belonged to a man of great kindness and noble character. His name was Boaz, and their paths were destined to cross. Chapter 4. Shadows in the Barley Field. The sun had just begun its ascent, casting a soft golden hue over the vast barley fields of Bethlehem. The air was filled with the sounds of the harvest, the rhythmic swish of the sickles, the light-hearted banter of the workers, and the distant laughter of children playing. Among these workers, Ruth stood out. Her Moabite features, combined with her quiet determination and grace, made her a unique presence. With her head down and her focus on gleaning, she moved diligently behind the harvesters, gathering the fallen stalks of barley. Unknown to Ruth, she had caught the attention of a figure from a distance. Boaz, the owner of the fields and a respected elder in Bethlehem, had returned from a journey and was overseeing the harvest. His gaze settled on Ruth, noticing not just her foreign appearance, but also her dedication and respect for the workers' boundaries. Curious, he approached his foreman. "Whose young woman is that?" he inquired, nodding towards Ruth. The foreman replied, "She is the Moabite who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She asked for permission to glean and gather among the sheaves, and she has been hard at work since early morning." Boaz, intrigued and impressed, approached Ruth. Her heart raced as she saw the landowner coming her way. She bowed low as he reached her, showing her respect. "Do not go to glean in another field," Boaz said, his voice kind. "Stay here with my servant girls. Watch where the men are harvesting and follow along. I have told the men not to touch you, and if you are thirsty, go to the jars and drink from what the servants have drawn." Ruth, overwhelmed by this unexpected kindness, bowed down again, her voice filled with emotion. "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, a foreigner?" Boaz smiled gently. "I have been told about all you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your homeland to come to a people you did not know before. May the Lord reward you for your deeds." Ruth's eyes welled up with tears. She had not expected such kindness and recognition, especially not from someone of Boaz's standing. The day wore on, and at mealtime Boaz invited Ruth to share bread with him and his workers. She sat beside the reapers, a Moabite among Judeans, yet feeling a sense of belonging she hadn't expected. By the end of the day, Ruth returned home with a generous amount of barley, a heart full of gratitude, and stories of kindness to share with Naomi. And as the shadows lengthened in the barley field, it became clear that the threads of destiny were weaving a tapestry that neither Ruth nor Boaz could have anticipated. Chapter 5. Whispers in the Night. The sun had set over Bethlehem, and the small town was wrapped in a peaceful quietude. The end of the harvest day brought with it a sense of accomplishment and rest. Families gathered in their homes, sharing the day's events and the fruits of their labour. In Naomi and Ruth's dwelling, the atmosphere was different. As Ruth recounted her day's experiences and the kindness shown by Boaz, Naomi's face lit up with recognition and a hint of hope. "The man is a close relative of ours," Naomi exclaimed, her voice filled with wonder. "He is one of our family redeemers." Ruth looked puzzled, not understanding the significance of this title. Naomi, realizing that Ruth was unfamiliar with the Hebrew customs, began to explain. "In our traditions, a family redeemer is a close relative who has the responsibility to restore the rights of his family members in times of difficulty or loss." The weight of Naomi's words settled on Ruth. The realization that Boaz was not just a kind landowner, but a man who could potentially change their destiny filled her with a mix of hope and apprehension. Seeing Ruth's contemplation, Naomi continued, "Boaz's kindness is evident, but we must also play our part. There is a way, a tradition, that could bind our futures with his." In the dim light of their dwelling, Naomi whispered a plan to Ruth, a plan that required courage, trust, and faith in the traditions of a land that was becoming home to Ruth. Night deepened, and under the blanket of darkness, at the threshing floor, Boaz was overseeing the winnowing of barley, ensuring that the grain was separated and stored properly. As the process ended and the workers dispersed, Boaz, content and a little weary, found a spot to rest. Following Naomi's instructions, Ruth dressed in her finest, bathed in scented oils, and made her way to the threshing floor. With each step, her heart raced, torn between excitement and uncertainty. She approached the sleeping Boaz, uncovering his feet and laying down beside them, a symbolic act of seeking protection and refuge. In the stillness of the night, a rustle awoke Boaz. Startled, he looked down to find Ruth at his feet. "Who are you?" he whispered. "It's me, Ruth," she responded, her voice soft but firm. "Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." The weight of her words hung in the air. Boaz, understanding the gravity of her proposal and her trust in him, replied, Blessed are you, Ruth. You have shown more kindness now than before. Do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask." As dawn approached, Ruth returned to Naomi, her heart light and hope renewed. The whispers of the night held promises, and the unfolding day would determine their futures. Chapter 6. The Elders' Council. The sun shone brightly over Bethlehem, casting a warm golden hue on its cobblestone paths and the bustling market square. The town was alive with activity, yet there was a particular sense of anticipation in the air. Boaz, resolute in his decision to honour Ruth's request and fulfil his role as a redeemer, headed to the town gate. It was at this spot that important matters were settled, where the elders sat in council and where decisions that affected the community were made. Gathering 10 of the town's elders, Boaz began to share the tale of Naomi's return, Ruth's unwavering loyalty, and the matter of the land that once belonged to Elimelech, Naomi's late husband. "There is a piece of land that belonged to our brother Elimelech," Boaz began, addressing the gathered elders and the onlookers. "Naomi wishes to sell it. As the nearest kin, I bring this matter before you." The elders listened intently, nodding in understanding. The preservation of land within families was a significant aspect of their culture. But Boaz continued, adding a twist to his tale. "If you choose to purchase the land, know that with it, you also take responsibility for Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, to perpetuate the name of the deceased with his property." A murmur spread through the gathering. The situation was more complex than it first seemed. The closer relative, initially willing to redeem the land, hesitated. Marrying Ruth and ensuring her offspring inherited the land would potentially jeopardize his own inheritance. He turned to Boaz, saying, "In that case, I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it, I cannot do it." Recognizing the importance of sealing the deal and making it public, the closer relative removed his sandal and handed it to Boaz, a symbolic gesture of transferring his redemption rights. Boaz, holding the sandal high for all to see, proclaimed, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon, and I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite as my wife, to perpetuate the name of the deceased." The elders, witnessing the act, responded, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel." Cheers erupted from the gathered crowd. The matter was settled, the redemption complete. Boaz and Ruth's futures, once uncertain, were now intertwined, endorsed by both tradition and the community. And as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across Bethlehem, it seemed to herald a new beginning for the two and for the generations to come. Chapter 7. The Cloaks Promise. The streets of Bethlehem were filled with chatter about Boaz and Ruth. Their unique story, grounded in loyalty, faith, and respect for tradition, resonated with many. The heart-warming union of the distinguished elder and the Moabite widow held promise, not just for them, but for the entire community. In the midst of this atmosphere, preparations for their wedding began. Naomi, whose life had been marked by so many sorrows, found herself in the whirlwind of festivity. Her role was not just that of the mother-in-law, but also a guiding figure, bridging the traditions of Bethlehem with the unfamiliar customs of Ruth's Moabite heritage. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Musicians played joyful tunes, and the aroma of festive delicacies wafted through the air. Children ran about, their laughter adding to the celebratory ambiance. As the ceremony began, Ruth stood radiant in her bridal attire, a mix of Moabite intricacies and Israelite traditions. But it was the cloak she wore over her shoulders that held everyone's attention. It was the same cloak under which she had sought refuge on that fateful night at the threshing floor. Boaz approached Ruth, his gaze filled with admiration and promise. Taking the cloak, he draped it around them both, enveloping them in its warm embrace. It was a symbol of protection, of his commitment to shield and provide for Ruth, just as she had sought shelter under its folds. With blessings from the elders and the community, the couple exchanged their vows. Promises of love, commitment and partnership echoed in the open courtyard. Naomi, watching from the side, felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. The very cloak that signalled a turning point in their lives now stood as a testament to their faith and God's providence. Her heart, which had once felt so empty, was now overflowing with joy and gratitude. The festivities went on into the night with dance, music, and merriment. The couple was surrounded by love, blessings, and hope for the future. And as the stars twinkled overhead, it became evident that the Cloaks Promise was not just for Ruth and Boaz, but was a symbol of hope, restoration, and divine providence for all of Bethlehem and the generations to come. Chapter 8. Of Weddings and Wheat Fields. Following the euphoria of the wedding, life in Bethlehem slowly returned to its everyday rhythm. The fields, which had borne witness to Ruth's diligence and the burgeoning relationship between her and Boaz, were now lush with a new harvest. Ruth, once a foreigner cautiously gleaning at the edges, now walked the fields with a sense of belonging. Side by side with Boaz, they oversaw the harvesters, ensuring that, like before, a portion was intentionally left behind for the less fortunate. The couple's love story had become the stuff of legend in Bethlehem, and their union seemed to usher in an era of abundance. The fields yielded a bountiful harvest, and their granaries were full. It was as though nature itself was celebrating their union. Naomi too found herself swept up in this new chapter. Her once empty home now echoed with laughter and joy. As she watched Ruth and Boaz work the fields or share quiet moments of intimacy, she was reminded of God's ability to bring beauty from ashes. One day, as Ruth and Boaz stood overlooking the wheat fields, shimmering golden under the afternoon sun, Boaz turned to Ruth, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "Do you remember the first time I laid eyes on you in this very field?" he asked. Ruth laughed. "How could I forget? I was so worried about being a foreigner and trespassing on your land." Boaz took her hand. "And now, look at us. This field isn't just a testament to our love, but to God's plan. Every stalk of wheat, every sheaf, tells a story of redemption, resilience, and hope." They continued their walk hand in hand, their path intertwined with the rows of golden wheat. The fields that had been a place of labour and sustenance were now a sanctuary of memories and dreams. In the months that followed, another joyous announcement spread through Bethlehem. Ruth was with child. The news brought an added layer of happiness to their home. Naomi, who had once resigned herself to a life of sorrow, found herself eagerly anticipating the role of a grandmother. The community shared in their joy, and prayers were offered for the well-being of the child. The lineage of Elimelech, which once seemed on the brink of extinction, was now set to continue. And so, amid weddings and wheat fields, a new chapter began. A chapter that promised not just growth in the fields, but also the growth of a family and its legacy. Chapter 9. The Blessings Echo. The winter months passed, and spring brought with it new blossoms and the sweet scent of anticipation. Ruth's pregnancy progressed smoothly, each passing day adding to the joy and excitement in their household. Naomi was a constant source of support, guiding Ruth with age-old wisdom and sharing tales of her own experiences as a mother. As the day of the birth drew nearer, women from all around Bethlehem visited Ruth, offering blessings, advice, and little gifts for the baby. Their house was a whirl of activity, with preparations for the new arrival in full swing. One evening, as the sun cast a golden hue over the horizon, Ruth went into labour. The experienced midwives of Bethlehem were summoned. With Naomi by her side, Ruth braced herself for the journey ahead. Hours turned into moments, pain mingled with hope. And as the first cry of the baby echoed through their home, a wave of joy and relief swept over everyone present. The town of Bethlehem, which had witnessed so many turns in the tale of Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz, now rejoiced at the birth of a baby boy. Naomi, tears of happiness streaming down her face, took the child in her arms, cradling him close. This child, born from a union that defied conventions, was a living testament to God's mysterious ways and unwavering grace. He was more than just an heir. He was a symbol of redemption and hope. Word of the birth spread quickly, and soon their home was filled with visitors, each eager to catch a glimpse of the baby and offer their blessings. The women of Bethlehem, seeing Naomi's joy, proclaimed, "Blessed be the Lord. He has not left you without a family redeemer. May this child restore your spirit and be the joy of your old age." As days turned into weeks, the baby, named Obed, became the center of attention. His giggles, his tiny grasps, and even his cries became sources of endless wonder. Boaz, ever the doting father, marveled at the miracle of life and the joy this child brought into their lives. Ruth often found herself reflecting on her journey, from the barren lands of Moab to the fertile fields of Bethlehem, from the sorrow of loss to the joy of love, and now motherhood. Obed's birth was not just a personal joy, but also a reminder of God's enduring blessings and the intricate tapestry of life where sorrow and joy, loss and gain are interwoven in divine design. And in the heart of Bethlehem, in the gentle coos of a child, the echo of blessings past, present and future resonated, signalling a lineage of promise and a legacy of faith. Chapter 10. From Fields to Palaces. Obed grew up surrounded by love. Under the watchful eyes of his parents and the loving guidance of his grandmother Naomi, he blossomed. Tales of resilience, faith and grace were woven into the fabric of his upbringing, and he carried them with him as he ventured into the world. The golden fields of Bethlehem, where Ruth had once gleaned and where Boaz had worked diligently, served as Obed's playground. Under the same sun that had witnessed so many of his family's pivotal moments, Obed ran, played, and learned about the land and its history. Boaz, with age showing in the silver strands of his hair, but with spirit undiminished, often took Obed to the fields, teaching him about harvests, about honouring the earth, and the importance of kindness and generosity. Naomi, her face lined with the wisdom of years, shared stories of their ancestors and of her own journey, from Bethlehem to Moab and back again. Obed listened intently, absorbing the lessons and understanding the importance of faith, loyalty, and divine providence. Ruth, looking at her son, often marvelled at the life they had built. From a stranger in a foreign land to the mother of a child who was now rooted in the traditions of Bethlehem, her journey was a testament to God's enduring love and grace. But Obed's destiny was not limited to the fields of Bethlehem. As the years passed, it became evident that his influence would extend far beyond the town's borders. He grew up to be a man of character, wisdom, and leadership. His story and the story of his family became legendary, not just in Bethlehem, but throughout the regions of Judah. He became a pillar in the community, and his lineage bore significant fruit. Obed became the father of Jesse, and in time, Jesse became the father of David. The young shepherd boy, David, would go on to defy giants, compose psalms, and eventually become the renowned King David, establishing a dynasty that would forever change the course of history. From the quiet, winding paths of Bethlehem to the majestic palaces of Jerusalem, the legacy of Boaz and Ruth lived on. Their story, intertwined with God's plan, laid the foundation for a royal lineage, culminating in the birth of Jesus Christ, the Saviour. And so, from fields to palaces, the tale of a Moabite woman and her Israelite redeemer echoed through time, reminding generations of the boundless nature of love, the strength of faith, and the intricate ways of divine providence. This concludes our story on Ruth. Thank you for listening, and make sure you check out Bible Intelligence for more content. May the Lord bless you. Amen.